Metro.
By Christina Narijna, Alex Taylor, Georgette Roberts and Tamar Lapin.
Police finally enforced an 8 p.m. curfew Thursday evening by busting up protests across the city, making dozens of arrests.
Thousands of protesters had continued to march in defiance of the deadline, including in Upper Manhattan, in the Bronx and in Brooklyn, on the eighth day of citywide demonstrations against police brutality.
An approximately 100-person demonstration in the Bronx organized by activist group Decolonize This Place, devolved into chaos when NYPD cops in riot gear blocked off the march near East 136th Street and Brook Avenue. The marchers chanted, "Let us go," but their pleas fell on deaf ears.
Just minutes after 8 p.m., cops stormed in to make arrests. They were seen pulling individual protesters out of the melee, placing them in zip ties and taking them into vans, as a recording about the curfew played.
Meanwhile, roughly 200 protesters were followed by cops as they went north at Central Park West and ran into another line of police at around 108th Street.
At around 8:10 p.m., cops moved in to arrest about a dozen people.
It was a peaceful protest, one marcher told the Post. Then, all of a sudden, boom. They came from all sides. They kettled us. There was no warning. There was no, there's a curfew. It's time go home.
The 23-year-old, who declined to give his name, said some of the protesters fled into Central Park.
On the Upper East Side, TV footage showed at least a dozen people being placed in handcuffs and taken into police vans for being out past deadline.
Another group of 10 people was spotted at 66th Street and Madison Avenue, sitting on the curb with their hands tied behind their backs, video showed.
Later, at around 10:15 p.m., cops surrounded around 200 marchers on 60th Street and 5th Avenue, making at least 4 arrests. Protesters scattered towards Central Park.
In Williamsburg, police waited until around 9 p.m. to suddenly move in on a crowd that had been walled off at Wythe and Penn Streets, according to footage from reporters.
But a mass of protesters that had begun their march at Barclays Center earlier in the evening were still making their way through downtown Brooklyn at around 9:15 p.m.
After 10 p.m., cops arrested a couple of people in the group near the intersection of Atlantic and Washington, but did not rush the crowd or use batons, a witness said.
I saw 2 cops arrest one guy and at least 100 people encircled these cops and they, the cops, were waving their arms for support. It was a scary scene. I was scared for them, said Ronald Weaver, 36, a filmmaker from Brooklyn.
The whole crowd was like, "Why are you arresting them? They didn't do anything."
By around 10:30 p.m., police had surrounded part of the group at Atlantic and Washington Avenues.
Video posted on social media showed public advocate Jumaane Williams and councilmember Brad Lander negotiating with officers in the hopes of allowing the march to continue and tire out. It seems the protesters were eventually allowed to disperse.
The police gave everyone a chance, which some nights they haven't done. They basically gave us an ultimatum. They said go home or go to jail, said Weaver. They did not rush us. They did not open up with baton hits. They actually let people go.
NYPD Chief of Department Terrence Monahan on Wednesday had warned that there would be no more tolerance for curfew breaking.
Echoing Monahan, Mayor Bill de Blasio on Thursday declared that enough is enough when it comes to protesters demonstrating past the time limit.
In the context of crisis, in the context of curfew, there comes a point where enough is enough, de Blasio said during his daily City Hall press briefing.